Picture this. Like, you're at a family dinner and your uncle starts talking about his diversified portfolio while your cousin complains about compound interest on her student loans. Meanwhile, you're sitting there nodding along like you understand, but secretly you're wondering if compound interest is something you catch from using dirty gym equipment. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, you're not alone and you're definitely not stupid. The truth is, most of us were never taught these basic financial concepts in school. Instead, we learned about the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell, which, let's be honest, has never helped me understand why my credit score went down after I paid off a loan. Today, we're going to fix that gap in your education by breaking down the essential financial concepts that actually matter in your daily life. My name is Nick, and I help people understand money without making them feel like they need a PhD in economics just to balance a checkbook. If you're tired of feeling lost every time someone mentions interest rates or inflation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps clear things up. Here's what's wild about financial literacy. It affects literally every major decision you'll make in your adult life. Whether you can buy a house, what car you can afford, when you can retire, and even whether you can take that vacation you've been dreaming about. Yet somehow we're expected to figure all this stuff out on our own, like some twisted adult scavenger hunt where the prize is not going broke. But here's the good news. I pray these concepts aren't actually that complicated once someone explains them in plain English instead of financial jargon that sounds like it was written by robots for other robots. By the end of this video, you'll understand the fundamental principles that govern how money works and, more importantly, how to make it work for you instead of against you. Let's start with something that hits everyone's paycheck every single month: taxes. Picture this scenario. You just finished a brutal month at work, putting in overtime and finally feeling good about that upcoming paycheck. Then payday arrives and you see that beautiful gross pay number at the top of your pay stub. But as you scroll down, reality hits harder than a cold shower. Federal income tax, state tax, Social Security, Medicare, and suddenly that number you were excited about has shrunk faster than your motivation on a Monday morning. This is the modern ritual of giving away a chunk of your money to invisible forces, and somehow we're supposed to say, thank you for the privilege. But here's the thing about taxes that most people don't understand. They're not just the government reaching into your pocket for fun. Taxes are literally the cost of civilization. You pay them, and in return, the government builds roads so you don't have to drive through mud puddles the size of small lakes. They fund schools so future generations can be just as confused about taxes as we are. They make sure your favorite taco truck isn't serving you a side of food poisoning. And yes, they send billion-dollar missiles to places you've probably never heard of. There are different types of taxes, and they each have their own special way of taking your money. Income tax hits the money you make from working, sales tax hits the money you spend on basically everything, and capital gains tax hits the money your investments made while you were sleeping, because apparently even your money's success is taxable. Nearly everyone also pays Social Security tax and Medicare tax. Think of Social Security tax as the government forcing you to save for retirement, except you don't get to choose where it goes or how it's invested. They take your money now and promise to give it back to you in small monthly payments when you're old enough to complain about everything. Medicare tax is basically health insurance for older people and those with serious health issues. Now comes the fun part. Filing your taxes, the government already knows exactly how much you owe them, but they make you guess anyway. It's like a game show where the wrong answer can land you in legal trouble. If you guess right, congratulations, you get to keep living your life. If you guess wrong, well, let's just say the IRS has a very particular set of skills for tracking people down. But here's something interesting that might make you feel slightly better about handing over your hard-earned cash. Countries with higher tax rates generally have better infrastructure, education systems, and social safety nets. So while it stings to see that money disappear from your paycheck, at least it's theoretically going toward making society function better. Next up, let's talk about banks, because most people have a completely wrong idea about what banks actually do with your money. When you walk into a bank, hand the teller your hard-earned cash and watch them count it with that practiced smile. You probably think your money is going straight into a vault somewhere, being guarded by security cameras and maybe a dragon. But here's the plot twist. That money is already gone before you even leave the building. Most people think of banks like a giant safe with one job, protecting people's money. But in reality, banks are more like financial matchmakers. When you deposit that $1,000, the bank immediately takes about 900 of it and loans it to someone who wants to buy a jet ski or start a business or pay for their kid's wedding. This system is called fractional reserve banking, and it works on the assumption that not everyone is going to show up at the same time demanding all their money back. That assumption works great until it doesn't. Like in 2008, when people suddenly lost confidence in the banking system and lined up around the block to withdraw everything they had, turns out when everyone wants their money at the same time, the whole system gets a bit wobbly. So how do banks actually make money? It's surprisingly simple. They borrow money from you at a low interest rate and lend it to other people at a higher interest rate. The difference is their profit. You're essentially the supply of money, and borrowers are the demand. Banks are just the middleman taking a cut of every transaction. But why would you let them use your money in the first place? Well, banks offer some pretty compelling reasons. First, it's way more convenient to swipe a card or transfer money electronically than to carry around a briefcase full of cash like you're in some kind of heist movie. Second, they actually pay you to let them hold your money, though the interest rates these days are so low you'd earn more money finding loose change in your couch cushions. Third, it's much safer than keeping your life savings in a shoebox under your bed. In the United States, most banks are insured up to $250,000 per person, meaning the government guarantees your money is safe, even if the bank somehow manages to lose it all on bad investments. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in all of finance: interest. Imagine you borrow $1,000 from someone, but when it's time to pay them back, they want $1,280 instead. Why the extra money? Because of interest. Interest is basically money's way of charging rent for the privilege of existing in someone else's hands. When you're the one borrowing money, interest is the price tag for using someone else's cash. When you're the one lending money or saving it in an account, interest is your reward for being patient and responsible enough to let someone else use your money temporarily. There are two main types of interest, and understanding the difference between them can literally save or cost you thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Simple interest is straightforward. It's like a flat fee. You borrow money, you pay a fixed percentage on top of what you borrowed. Done deal. But compound interest, that's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean either incredibly good for you or absolutely devastating, depending on which side of the equation you're on. Compound interest is interest on top of interest. It's like your money having babies and then those babies having babies of their own. Let's say you have a credit card with a 20% interest rate, which is pretty typical these days. You buy something and miss a payment. Now, you're paying interest not just on what you originally spent, but on the interest that accumulated too. Before you know it, that $12 burrito you charged to your card 6 months ago has somehow turned into a $50 life lesson about the dangers of carrying credit card debt. But here's where compound interest becomes your best friend instead of your worst enemy. When you're investing money at, say, 7% annual returns, compound interest works in your favor. Your $100 becomes $200, then $400, then $800. Give it enough time, and you wake up one day, decades later, older and significantly wealthier, with a slightly smug satisfaction about your past financial decisions. This is why understanding interest is crucial. It's the silent engine behind both wealth creation and financial destruction. When you're paying interest on debt, it's like a slow burn. that turns small financial mistakes into major problems. When you're earning interest on investments, it's like a time bomb that turns modest contributions into substantial wealth over time. The hack here is simple in concept, but requires discipline in execution. If you're paying interest, eliminate that debt as fast as possible. If you're earning interest through savings or investments, let it sit there, feed it regularly with new contributions, and give time the chance to work its magic. Interest is either working for you or against you. There's really no middle ground. Now let's talk about something that sneaks up on you like a ninja in the night, silently stealing the purchasing power from your wallet. Inflation. Picture this. You walk into your favorite grocery store, grab that same bag of chips you've been buying for years, and suddenly it costs 30% more than it did 6 months ago. But wait, it gets worse. You open the bag and realize it looks like someone already ate half of it. Congratulations, you've just experienced the double punch of inflation and shrinkflation, where your money buys less and you literally get less for what you're buying. Inflation is basically your money getting weaker over time. Like it's been hitting the gym, but only doing cardio and skipping all the strength training. Your $5 bill is still technically $5, but it has the purchasing power of what used to be a $3 bill. It's like your money is slowly deflating, but without the courtesy of making that sad balloon sound to warn you it's happening. So what actually causes this financial kryptonite? Sometimes it's simply too much money chasing too few goods. Imagine 2,000 people wanting to buy the same $500 TV, but there are only 1,000 TVs available. The store owner looks at this situation and thinks, well, if everyone wants it this badly, that'll be $800 now. Supply and demand economics in action, and your wallet is the casualty. Other times, it's supply chain problems making everything more expensive to produce. When it costs more to make something, guess who absorbs that cost? Spoiler alert, it's not the company. And sometimes inflation happens just because people expect it to happen. If everyone believes prices are going up, they start spending money faster, which actually drives prices up. It's like a self-fulfilling economic prophecy, except instead of finding true love, you find more expensive groceries. A little bit of inflation is actually normal, even healthy. 2% per year is the sweet spot that economists love. But when inflation spikes, your savings account starts looking like a melting ice cube, and wages typically lag behind like that friend who's always 5 minutes late to everything. When this happens, governments try to fight inflation by raising interest rates, making it more expensive to borrow money. The theory is that if people can't afford to borrow as much, they'll spend less, cooling down the economy like throwing ice cubes into an overheated soup. This brings us to something that makes everyone collectively nervous: recessions. A recession is when the economy shrinks for at least 2 quarters, which in normal people terms means 6 months of economic sadness. One day you're planning that family vacation, and the next day you're watching the news talk about mass layoffs while your investment account balance looks like it's doing limbo with the ground. During a recession, jobs disappear faster than your motivation on a Monday morning. Companies start cutting costs like they're on some twisted episode of extreme couponing, and everyone suddenly becomes very interested in buying only absolute necessities. People stop buying new cars and start fixing the ones they have. They cancel subscriptions, eat out less, and generally act like money is a finite resource, which, plot twist, it actually is. Recessions happen for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes interest rates get too high, making borrowing money as appealing as eating cardboard. Sometimes there's a global crisis like a pandemic that makes everyone stay home and rethink their life choices. Sometimes it's just the natural economic cycle doing its thing. Boom, peak, bust, reset, repeat. Think of the economy like a house party. During the boom phase, everyone's dancing, the music is loud, drinks are flowing, and someone just ordered pizza for everyone. But eventually, the lights come on, reality sets in, and someone checks their bank account balance. Suddenly, the DJ is playing melancholy music about corporate downsizing, and the party mood shifts dramatically. The good news is that recessions aren't permanent. They're more like economic hangovers, painful, inevitable, but temporary. Governments might lower interest rates, send out stimulus checks, or just cross their fingers and hope people start buying overpriced coffee again. Eventually, spending returns, businesses start hiring, and growth resumes, though not without leaving some economic scars that serve as reminders of what just happened. Now, let's discuss something that follows you around like a financial shadow, your credit score. This mysterious 3-digit number is basically a report card for adults, except instead of getting grounded for bad grades, you get punished with terrible interest rates and the inability to rent decent apartments. Your credit score is like having a financial reputation that precedes you into every major purchase decision. This score isn't about how much money you have in the bank, it's about trust and reliability. Lenders want to know one simple thing. If we give this person money, will they actually pay us back, or will they disappear into the night like some kind of financial ghost? Your credit score ranges from 300 to 850. Below 580, you're basically a walking red flag to lenders. Above 750, you're sparkling with adult financial credibility. So how is this magical number calculated? Payment history is the biggest factor. Do you pay your bills on time, or do you treat due dates like suggestions? Credit utilization comes next. This measures how much of your available credit you're actually using. If you have a $1,000 limit and you're maxing it out every month, that's like showing up to a potluck empty-handed, but eating 3 plates of food. The length of your credit history matters too. Having older accounts shows you're not a financial flight risk. Credit Mix looks at the variety of credit types you handle responsibly, and new credit inquiries track whether you've been desperately applying for credit everywhere, like someone trying to get into any available lifeboat on a sinking ship. But here's the weird part about improving your credit score. You actually have to use credit to build credit, but you can't use too much credit or you'll hurt your credit. It's like being told you need experience to get a job, but you need a job to get experience. The system makes perfect sense if you enjoy circular logic puzzles. Your credit score is like having a pet that requires constant attention. Ignore it, and it will make your life miserable in ways you never expected. Take care of it, and someday it might help you qualify for that mortgage you want. The strangest part is that you can have zero debt and still have a terrible credit score if you have no credit history. You can be financially responsible and still get punished by the system because you haven't played the credit game long enough. Speaking of games, let's talk about something that's completely made up, but somehow runs the entire world: money itself. The weird thing about currency is that it's basically a shared delusion that somehow works. Like, money exists because humans collectively decided that certain pieces of paper or numbers in computer systems represent value. There's no fundamental difference between a dollar bill and a piece of paper with your grocery list on it, except that society has agreed one of them can buy groceries and the other one cannot. Money makes trading easier and helps organize society, but its legitimacy comes entirely from collective belief. A dollar bill has value because we all agree it has value. The same principle applies to cryptocurrency, gold, or even those weird collectible digital images that people spend thousands of dollars on. The only reason any of these things can be exchanged for goods and services is because enough people believe they're worth something. So how does this illusion actually work in practice? Governments print money, central banks regulate how much is in circulation, and everyday people trade it for the things they need and want. Banks have to carefully control the money supply because if there's too much money floating around, inflation kicks in and everyone's savings become as valuable as monopoly money. It says if there's too little money available, nobody can afford to live, which creates its own set of problems. Money is essentially a social contract built on shared belief and trust. As long as enough people believe in the system, it keeps working. But When that trust breaks down, things can get interesting very quickly and not in a good way. Looking back at what we've covered, you now have the tools to understand money instead of being intimidated by it. Taxes fund civilization, banks are middlemen, interest either builds or destroys wealth, and your credit score follows you everywhere. Remember, time is your greatest asset. Compound interest is your best friend or worst enemy, and value creation is how fortunes are made. Most importantly, you don't need to be a genius to win with money, you just need to start. Now go forth and be slightly less confused at family dinners.